In late May 2026, Meghan Markle stood at a podium in Geneva, Switzerland. Behind her, illuminated panels displayed the faces of children who had tragically lost their lives to digital abuse. The banner across the stage read, "No child lost to social media." It was designed to be a definitive moment of global statesmanship, a powerful, empathetic return to the world stage. But what looked like a solemn act of public service quickly devolved into a staggering public relations disaster. Within hours of her deeply emotional address at the Lost Screen Memorial, a dark, humiliating accusation began to circulate. Critics and online analysts pointed out unusual rhythmic patterns in her words, leading to widespread reports that her passionate speech about the dangers of technology had allegedly been drafted by artificial intelligence. It was a devastating moral contradiction, and it perfectly encapsulates the current reality of the Sussex brand, a hollowed-out empire, desperate for relevance, substituting authentic connection with manufactured optics. This is the story of how an attempt to reclaim the moral high ground ended in spectacular backlash. Today, we are going to unpack exactly what happened in Switzerland, the psychological mechanics behind what critics are now calling her tragedy, vulture strategy, and why the Hollywood elite has quietly but ruthlessly severed ties with the couple. We will also examine the sudden desperate pivot from Prince Harry and what their latest frantic Netflix announcement reveals about the true crumbling state of their commercial survival. To understand the gravity of this collapse, we have to remember the staggering height from which they fell. Go back to 2018. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex were not just royals, they were a global phenomenon. They commanded a billion-dollar wedding, unparalleled public goodwill, and a narrative of progressive modernization that had the entire world watching. They were flanked by the ultimate A-list power brokers, Oprah Winfrey, the Beckhams, George Clooney. They possessed the kind of effortless institutional power that money cannot buy. They were handed the keys to a modern kingdom backed by the centuries-old weight of the British monarchy. They didn't need to chase headlines, they were the headline. But fast forward to today, and the contrast is glaring. The institutional protection is gone, the massive audio deals have imploded. The A-list friends who once flocked to their orbit have quietly evaporated, unwilling to risk their own brand equity by standing too close to the blast radius of constant manufactured drama. What remains is a staggering commercial desperation. Without the palace machinery to legitimize their standing, they are now forced to engineer their own relevance, and that has led to a strategy that relies increasingly on proximity to other people's trauma. This brings us to the Geneva trip in May 2026. The World Health Assembly is a serious, highly bureaucratic gathering of global health leaders and ministers. It is not traditionally a venue for celebrity photo opportunities, but Meghan Markle traveled alone to Switzerland to participate in the unveiling of the Lost Screen Memorial alongside the Director General of the World Health Organization. On paper, the cause is unassailable. Protecting children from predatory algorithms and cyberbullying is a vital, universal priority, but public perception is driven by patterns of behavior, and viewers immediately recognized a familiar, unsettling playbook. We saw it years ago in Uvalde, Texas, when she arrived uninvited with a camera crew following a mass shooting. We saw it when her team ensured the release of imagery showing her communing with victims of the Los Angeles wildfires and the grieving families of the Bondi Beach tragedy. Time and again, her camp ensures that images of her looking visibly moved, comforting the grieving, are rapidly distributed to international press outlets. Small details matter. Hours before she stepped up to the podium in Geneva to mourn other people's children, her team ensured a carefully curated photo of Princess Lilibet was leaked to social media to generate weekend headlines. It was a subtle but unmistakable effort to dominate the news cycle before she even touched down in Europe. In public relations, this is known as the weaponization of victimhood. By wrapping herself in the unimpeachable grief of parents who have lost their children, she attempts to build a human shield against criticism. If you question her presence, you are accused of attacking a humanitarian. It is a highly calculated move designed to elevate her personal profile and scrub a toxic brand clean using the raw suffering of others. But this time the audience wasn't just cynical, they were actively dissecting the performance. During her speech, Meghan warned the audience about relentless algorithms, exploitative engagement, and how artificial intelligence is accelerating and amplifying dangers for children worldwide. It was delivered with her signature dramatic pauses and intense direct eye contact. It was supposed to be her defining moment, but almost immediately the authenticity of the moment shattered. Experienced observers and digital critics began running the transcript of her speech through AI detection software. The results leaked to the press, sparking brutal headlines across global outlets. The wording, critics noted, was unusually polished, heavily repetitive, and rhythmically structured in a way that screamed of machine-generated text. While her camp pushed back, suggesting that public speeches are often collaborative efforts, the damage was already done. Think about the staggering irony. Here is a woman standing in front of memorial light boxes featuring the lock screens of dead children, delivering a passionate warning about the existential threat of artificial intelligence, while allegedly using that exact same technology to ghostwrite her empathy. It was a complete ethical collapse. A moment that was supposed to project deep human warmth instead projected a cold, algorithmic emptiness. It confirmed the worst suspicions of her critics that the compassion is entirely performative. A plug-and-play script designed to generate a targeted emotional response. The blowback was immediate. Social media lit up not with praise for her advocacy, but with deep discomfort. The A-list, watching from the gated estates of Montecito and Los Angeles, took another collective step back. You do not maintain a premium Hollywood brand by associating with highly mocked behavior. The elite inner circle has realized that proximity to the Sussexes no longer brings prestige, it brings complication. Sensing the narrative slipping entirely out of their control, the Sussex PR machine did what it always does. They deployed a massive distraction. Just as the Geneva backlash reached its peak, a sudden, highly aggressive exclusive was leaked to the entertainment press. Deadline announced that Prince Harry and Meghan were officially developing a new explosive Netflix movie, a war film based on the true story of British soldiers under siege in Afghanistan. It was a desperate flex of power, a warning shot to the industry and the public, signaling that they still hold weight at Netflix, that they can still command major Hollywood adaptations. But this announcement didn't project strength. It exposed a massive underlying panic. Why announce a complex, big-budget war movie when you haven't even produced the romantic adaptation of Meet Me at the Lake that you bought the rights to years ago? Why the sudden pivot from wellness and lifestyle brands to military heroics? Because the illusion is breaking. Harry is attempting to retreat to his military glory days, the one unassailable part of his past, before the royal exit, before the endless complaining. He is returning to the narrative of the war hero because the narrative of the Hollywood mogul has definitively failed. But this sudden rush to produce a combat movie is not a sign of a thriving production company. It is a sign of internal panic, a fractured strategy, and a point of no return for a couple who realize their current brand is entirely unsustainable. What is happening behind the scenes at Netflix right now, and the quiet moves being made by the royal family in response, changes the entire trajectory of this story. The sudden Deadline announcement regarding No Way Out, their supposed Afghanistan war film, was not a triumph. It was a distress signal. Behind the polished PR framing, Hollywood insiders immediately recognized the maneuver for what it truly was, a thinly veiled threat to an industry that has begun to aggressively shut them out by pushing a narrative that they are active, powerful producers. The Sussex camp was attempting to remind the entertainment elite that they still hold casting power, that they are still gatekeepers. It was an unspoken demand: you must remain loyal to us, or you will be excluded from our upcoming projects. But Hollywood operates on a very cold mathematical reality, and the industry has already done the math. The currency of the Sussex brand has entirely collapsed. The A-list superstars who once eagerly flooded the 2018 royal wedding, the Oprah Winfreys, the Beckhams, the Clooney tier of untouchable celebrity, have quietly but definitively vanished from their orbit. These power brokers did not flock to Harry and Meghan because of their producing prowess. They associated with them because of the irresistible allure of the British crown and the unspoken promise of proximity to institutional majesty. Now that the palace doors are permanently locked, the Hollywood elite have realized that standing next to the Sussexes no longer brings prestige. It brings the radioactive fallout of constant low-rent grievance. This total isolation explains the frantic shift in their strategy. They are no longer a united front offering a cohesive brand of global philanthropy. Instead, what we are witnessing is the real-time splintering of two deeply panicked individuals, throwing wildly different concepts at the wall to see what survives. Meghan has doubled down on the tragedy aesthetic. By showing up at children's hospitals and global memorials, she is attempting to forcibly inject herself into narratives of undeniable purity. It is a cynical calculation if she is standing next to a grieving parent. The media cannot criticize her without looking monstrous. It is the ultimate weaponization of victimhood, a desperate attempt to use the profound suffering of others as a bulletproof vest for her own public image. Harry, on the other hand, is regressing into the only identity that ever offered him unquestioned respect. He is retreating to his military days. But even this pivot is fraught with devastating moral contradictions. The announcement of an Afghanistan combat film feels profoundly tone-deaf coming from a man who recently alienated the global veteran community by publicly gloating about his kill count in a deeply controversial memoir. The military establishment values quiet service, self-sacrifice, and discretion, attempting to monetize the trauma of war through a Hollywood streaming service. All while demanding the deference owed to a military patron is a staggering miscalculation. It proves how dangerously disconnected he has become from the values he claims to champion. Across the Atlantic, the British monarchy's response to this ongoing spiral has been a masterclass in psychological warfare. There are no angry press releases. There are no retaliatory interviews. There is only a suffocating, absolute silence. The firm has realized that the most lethal weapon against a brand, built entirely on victimhood, is total indifference. Harry and Meghan's greatest currency was the illusion of a two-sided war. By refusing to engage the palace, has starved them of their primary oxygen source. Without the royal family to push against, the Sussexes are left shadowboxing in the dark, forced to endlessly recycle their grievances to a public that stopped listening years ago. This dynamic is exactly why the public finds it so difficult to look away. We are not merely watching celebrity gossip. We are observing a profound modern tragedy of hubris. We are watching two people who possessed the ultimate privilege, a life of guaranteed wealth, historic significance, and permanent institutional protection, voluntarily traded all for the exhausting, precarious grind of commercial relevance. They walked away from an empire that demanded duty but offered immortality, in exchange for an industry that offers millions but demands constant, unyielding popularity. The Netflix contract that once served as their golden parachute is reportedly reaching its twilight. The grand projects they announced years ago, like the highly publicized adaptation of Meet Me at the Lake, have materialized into absolutely nothing. The magic of their initial documentary cannot be recreated because the well of royal secrets has completely dried up. They have no more insider access. The illusion of power has finally given way to the undeniable reality of commercial desperation. What happens next is not a triumphant Hollywood comeback. It is a slow, agonizing fade into obscurity, as the A-list continues to distance themselves and the streaming giants quietly close their checkbooks. Harry and Meghan will be forced to seek out smaller and smaller stages just to feel the warmth of the spotlight. The tragedy vulture strategy is not the beginning of a rebrand. It is the final, desperate act of a couple who have realized far too late that they traded a kingdom for a fleeting moment of applause. Thank you for exploring this complex narrative with us today. If you appreciate this level of deep psychological analysis, make sure to subscribe and share your thoughts on what the next move will inevitably be.